Are there qualities that you need to possess in order to step into the fullness of God's promises towards you? Some promises are conditional. And in this episode, we're going to be unpacking the power of faith and courage by looking at the story of Caleb. Let's figure it out. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Figuring It Out. This is the place where we have conversations that are going to set you up to win. Figuring It Out is a faith-based personal development channel, and I'm your Chief Encouragement Officer. My name is Aggie. Today we're going to be digging into the amazing story of Caleb. I'm really hoping that with this episode I will help you to see why some people step into the fullness of their promises from God and why others fail to. And then I will ask you, or I expect and hope of you, that you sit back and reflect after watching this episode and you correct some of your attitudes so that nothing you do or say holds you back from stepping into all that God has in store for you. So you might be wondering who Caleb is and why we are looking at his character. To get an idea of who Caleb is, let's go together to Numbers chapter 13, verses 1 and 12. This is the section where Moses decided to send a few spies to scout the promised land that God had promised to the Israelites. And in verse 1, it says, "The Lord said to Moses, 'Send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites.' Moses chose one leader from each of the 12 tribes, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, was chosen as the leader for the tribe of Judah." So God gives a promise to the Israelites and says, "I have this land of milk and honey that I have set aside for you guys." In other words, it is available for the taking. And he asks Moses to send a few spies to scout the land so that with that awareness, they can start to strategize around how they are going to come in and take over the land. So Caleb is one of the 12 spies that Moses sent out. Okay, so the 12 go in and they obviously have to come back and give Moses a report. So let's look at what it is that they say. When they returned, they brought back a report from the land, but 10 of them focused on the negatives. They focused on the challenges. They focused on the defeating narrative. But Caleb, together with Joshua, focused on something completely different. In Numbers chapter 13, verse 30, Caleb wasn't deterred. In fact, it says, "Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, 'We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it.'" Why was Caleb speaking like this? Because the other 10 were speaking the complete opposite. They were giants in the land. In fact, I don't think we will be able to conquer them. And then they said, we seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. It's amazing how sometimes you can look at a situation, and if you look at it through the eyes of your own strength, you start to draw conclusions from that situation, from what your eyes have seen, that the other party that is sitting across from you has not even communicated. So basically, you defeat yourself purely through your thinking patterns. And this is what the 10 spies that saw the enemy as the giants and saw themselves as grasshoppers was doing to themselves. They were defeating themselves purely through the narratives, purely through the story that they were telling themselves. The people were rebelling. The whole community began weeping out loud, and they cried all night because of the report of the 10, the negative, the ones that were negative. And they say things like, why is the Lord taking us to this country only to have us die in battle? Because again, they were believing that narrative of them seeing themselves as grasshoppers and seeing their opponents as giants. And then they started saying things like, let's choose a new leader and go back to Egypt. And two of the men who had explored the land, that is Joshua and Caleb, said to all the people of Israel, the land we traveled through and explored is a wonderful land. And here is another key statement. And if the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us safely into that land and give it to us. It is a rich land flowing with milk and honey. Do not rebel against the Lord and don't be afraid of the people of the land. They are only helpless prey to us. They have no protection, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. I get chills and goosebumps when I read this, because oftentimes when we face issues, when we face challenges, when we're about to get into new spaces that we have prayed about, that we've cried out to God for, we get to a point that is quite similar to this one, where it's almost like there's a fork in the road and there are two options. You can either believe that the God who gave you that vision, that God who brought you from wherever you are up to where you are right now, is capable of bringing you through to the finish line. Or you can start looking at the spaces and say things like, oh, I'm the only Black person, the system is going to work against me. Or you can say things like, I'm too short, or I'm from a different tribe, so I don't think they will accept me, or I don't have that degree, so I don't think I'll get in. You start to look at things through the human eye and you forget who is with you. What made Joshua and Caleb distinct was the fact that they were not looking at their own strength. They were not looking at their qualifications. They were not looking at their capabilities. They were looking at the power of God. They were looking at the fact that God is with them. God was with them. That was the source of their confidence. So friend, I want to ask you, and you can feel free to type in the comments at this point, and tell me, where is your source of confidence? In those moments when you're facing a challenge, what are your reflexes like? What is your default setting? What do you retract back to? Do you, like Caleb, say, the Lord is with me? Or do you look at the circumstances and even start magnifying the circumstances, idolizing the circumstances by lending them the power of your tongue? Because the Bible also says that life and death are in the power of the tongue. So every time you're speaking, every time you're talking about, oh, my husband has always been like this, I don't think he's going to change, you are doing exactly what the 10 spies did. And that will lead to your own defeat. So I want to shake you up to wake up to the fact that you're either going to have to trust God or you're going to have to trust God. If you don't trust God, then you're going to self-defeat. And it has nothing to do with God. It has to do with where you placed your faith, where you placed your belief. Belief is a two-sided phenomena. Fear is just as impactful or as effective, negatively effective, as faith is. Fear believes in the threat of the enemy, while faith believes in the faithfulness of God. These are both forms of belief, and the question is, which one are you choosing? Are you like Caleb, going to choose to believe in God? This is really my prayer for you, such that even when you're facing things that look like giants, you look at them and you say, no, these things are helpless prey to me. You don't start talking negatively about your teenage son just because they are going through a phase of hormonal changes, and then you start to make permanent declarations over them due to a temporary circumstance. And you completely leave the fact that God is with you out of the picture. Because the way the other Israelites spoke was like, They were not even aware of God. They started saying crazy things like let's choose another leader, let's go back to Egypt. And we do this all the time. And this is why we get defeated. It is not that God has failed us. It is that we have failed ourselves by placing our faith in the wrong source. We should be uncompromisingly placing our faith in God. And I hope that if you fail to take anything else out of this episode, that you take that. So this is the background as to why in verse 24, I really encourage you to read the whole chapter so that you get the whole gist of it, because God was so angry with these people and he made a vow that they are not going to enter the promised land. And then Moses started to beg for the people that God may have mercy on them. And eventually, in verse 24, God reveals something about how he saw Caleb that I think is very critical for us to pick up on. He says in verse 24, "But my servant Caleb has a different attitude than the others have. He has remained loyal to me. So I will bring him into the land he explored. His descendants will possess their full share of that land." Whenever I read the Bible, I find that it's so important to, first of all, read it over and over and over again, and then read it slowly. I don't know if you realize that Caleb's standpoint actually turned out to become a generational blessing. Because the things that you're carelessly saying today are going to affect your children and your children's children. And at the same time, if you take wake-up calls like this one very seriously, the things you will begin to say because of your faith in God are going to affect your children and your children's children. Because God says, "But my servant Caleb has a different attitude than the others have. He has remained loyal to me. I will bring him into the land he explored." And then listen for this. "His descendants will possess their full share of that land." So Caleb's standpoint, his attitude, his faith, his loyalty to God opened up a generational blessing. Think about that and check yourself. When you face problems, where does your mouth go? Does your mouth go in the direction of, "This is a giant, it's going to take me down, I'm like a grasshopper"? Or does your mouth go in the direction of, "I know the God that I serve. I know that he is with me. I know that he will bring me through. I know that he will never fail me or forsake me. I know that my God is a covenant-keeping God"? Where is your mouth going? Because whatever words you are uttering, they are an indication of whether you fall in the category of Caleb and Joshua, or if you fall in the category of the rest. And it's really a choice. So sometimes when we find ourselves in situations where we act carelessly, we need to realize that it is not God that is failing us. It is our carelessness, our unbelief, our fear that is failing us. And here's the thing. Those things that fail us are not even from God. Because the Bible says God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, of love, and of a sound mind. So when you start talking nonsense, I don't want to water it down, because that's what it really is. Because it has such a negative generational impact that it is nothing but utter nonsense. When you start talking nonsense, you lose the battle, not because of God, but because you are breaking a principle of God. God sets up principles in his word, such as life and death are in the power of the tongue, and it's up to you to plug in and work the principle. And just like any principle, you can work it for the positive, or you can work it for the negative. I hope for you today that you choose to work it for the positive, just like Caleb did. So as we close this episode, I want you to think about what you're wholeheartedly devoted to. Are you really wholeheartedly devoted to God? Or do you easily let circumstances check you up? When you look at situations, Do you look at them through the eyes of your own strength, or do you take the time to look at them through the ability and the strength of God? When you are standing before an obstacle, do you look at it like you have to climb over or through this obstacle in your own strength, or do you look at it from the perspective of it is God who goes with you? It is by His strength that you can take out an army, that you can climb over walls, that you can bring mountains down. I pray and hope that you, just like Caleb, will not only believe in God when things are going well, but that you will trust God even in those moments when fear and doubt are staring you right in the face. That you will look back at those emotions and you will take a stand and say, I know my God, and I know that He will bring me through. Because in the end, we see that God really came through for Caleb. In Joshua chapter 14, verses 10 to 12, Caleb says, Now then, just as the Lord promised, He has kept me alive for 45 years. So here I am today, 85 years old. I'm still as strong today as the day that Moses sent me out. Caleb, at the age of 85, asked for the mountain region where the giants still lived, and God gave him victory over them. This was his reward for his faithfulness and his courage. So what can we learn from Caleb? I believe that unwavering faith is crucial. This is what Caleb's story is transporting over us. And it's a decision. It's a decision that you make, and you stand to this decision through thick and thin. And it's important to know who stands with you, to become aware of God's capability, so that you know, even if you face the greatest giant, you can look at it and say, I serve the God who is greater than the greatest, bigger than the biggest, higher than the highest. There's no power out there that can outdo God. And when you walk with this knowledge and understanding, and you let it permeate every part of you, your decision making, your attitude, it changes everything. Caleb's wholehearted devotion drew God in so much so that God was like, this guy is different. I will show up for this guy. I will bless this guy. I will keep my word to this guy. And that can be you. That can be you. You can start to see and understand the principles of God and work them out for your favor. So let's remember that just like Caleb, we're going to face challenges. We're going to come across situations that are gigantic in nature. And then we're going to have to make a choice. We're going to have to make a decision as far as our faith is concerned. We're going to have to choose to neglect fear, to neglect doubt, because we know that those things are not from God, and we're going to have to choose to believe in God. And as we do that, God will look at us just like He looked at Caleb and say, this Aggie, she has a different spirit. And because she's wholeheartedly loyal to me, I will bless her. And I love the way God talks in the Bible. He says things like, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. This is also one of the reasons why I'm always like, get to know God. Get to know God so that you don't waste energy. So for example, if someone is trying to work against me, I don't have to waste energy trying to sort them out and this and that, because God has said He will bless those who bless me and He will curse those who curse me. And I trust God, right? So I can go about having a joyful, praiseful, loveful life because I know the God that I serve. I know He will show up for me in battle. I know that He is taking care of my enemies for me by cursing those who curse me. And He is blessing those who bless me, and He's going ahead of me and making crooked paths straight. And He's making the so-called giants, He's making them like prey in front of me. Helpless prey, just like Caleb. And Joshua said, okay. I pray that this blesses you and stirs you up to let go of any wrong attitudes and utterances that you have been carrying around, and to stand in faith, knowing that God is faithful to those that choose to be uncompromisingly loyal to Him. And in our generation, we are blessed to have the Holy Spirit. So when you feel like some of these things are hard to do, just ask for His help and He will be faithful. Actually, just ask for His help. Whether you find the things easy or you find them hard, ask for His help. And I can assure you, you will experience the faithfulness of God. I want to thank you so much for always spending your time with me. I appreciate it. I have one request. Share this at least with one person. Because sometimes all that people need is the right word at the right time, and it can change the trajectory of their lives. Thank you so much for your time. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.